After the mess that was the last suppression, I have to go back and buy a lot of these outfits back. We've lost so much stuff. But today's going to be a little bit of a different one. And that's why you're currently seeing me go through the process of buying everything and just making... Oh, we don't even have enough. Stupid Rudolph the Murder Deer. I need these. Oh, well, I don't need them that bad. But this one is part 2 of Project Lore. So we're going to be building on what we saw before. In the last episode, we read The Bird, Bloodbath, I think Dream. Yeah, I believe it was Void Dream, and then it was the Big Bad Wolf in Red. I think those were the ones. So today, we're going to be reading some of the other ones and figuring out a little bit more about the lore of some of the interesting ones. And while we're looking into the lore, we're going to be doing our normal day. I've reset to day 26. We're back to just having the magical girl over here. And honestly, this day should be pretty straightforward and easy. As long as I just do work with all of the abnormalities that I normally do work with, I can see what I'm doing. There's not going to be any serious surprises coming up. We'll be just fine. This day's really a piece of cake now compared to the suppressions. So, not a big deal at all. And that gives me plenty of time to sit and read a little. The first thing I'm going to read about is the Queen of Hatred. Why? Because it's the most obnoxious one. And as much as I've seen some people talk about Der Freischütz, who we will be reading today, I want to read about Army, maybe Scarecrow. Really, the list goes on because all of these are pretty interesting. But today I'm tackling the most annoying ones. At least if they go anywhere or do anything too stupid. Now, the magical girl, also known as the Queen of Hatred. Here we go. A humanoid abnormality that looks like it would go and fight villains for peace and justice at any moment. It is friendly toward every employee and is able to engage in casual conversation. It believes that it is a hero, born to save the world, and takes considerable pride in it. When it shows signs of anxiety or doubt while conversing with an employee, its appearance and personality will undergo an adverse change within 4 days, and it will display symptoms of dissociative disorders. The definition of good and evil are fixed in its mind. Some assume that when the abnormality's beliefs lead to a horrible doubt about the existence of evil, it will choose to become evil to negate that doubt. So, before I read on, it seems like this one has things are either good or it's bad. It's either heads or it's tails. There is no middle ground. There is no gray area. Which, if we are keeping with the assumption from last time, which I will review a little bit in case you forget or you didn't catch the first project lore building, we came to the assumption, we're working on an assumption, working toward a theory, in which we're trying to piece together what the heck is going on here. And my assumption so far is that this is either a coping mechanism in which there are these abnormalities which represent compartmentalization, like style-esque, however you want to say it, versions of the person who's going through this trauma, who lost someone due to a self-got. They're working through this grief, and it's being represented by these strange abnormalities that feel wrong, and that's why they're called abnormalities. If you want to know more about my theory and what we kind of have come to the conclusion of so far, based on what I currently know, I highly recommend going back and rewatching Project Lore Building 1. But if you don't care, just know that that's kind of the too long didn't read version. The TLDR this is not necessarily a physical thing. This is a metaphysical thing that someone is using to cope with loss and cope with grief. With that being said, this seems like the portion of their mind, the portion of the person who is very like black and white in the world. And that makes sense to them. Something either is a thing or it's not a thing. And that, when you're going through grief, is really, really, like, it's easy to, like, fall into that, in that things have to be one way or another. Because then you can sort through them in your mind. You can give them, like, a categorically, this thing is a good thing and this thing is an evil thing. And then you can say, okay, only the good things are things that I want to be doing. And I need to avoid the bad things or the evil things at all costs. So that kind of plays into this. This seems like that part of them. Now, this also sort of kind of plays into another theory that I have kind of running, and I'll get into that later, but I want to continue this right now. All parameters will return to normal after the negative phase passes, and the abnormality will have no memory of the behavior it exhibited during that phase. Audio log 1 plays. An employee speaking with the magical girl.
How are you feeling today?
The magical girl answers.
Pretty good. The world is at peace, and it's quiet around here. Peace is a great thing to have. It means there aren't any villains around, right?
Audio log 2.
You're looking a bit down today. No, I'm still fine. The world is peaceful, and it's...
The abnormality fell silent and did not wish to continue speaking. The rest of the audio log is omitted. Audio log 3.
Are you all right? Why? Is it still so peaceful? You see, the whole purpose of my life is to defeat villains. It's as if the world is trying to say it doesn't need me anymore. Really? Why is it so peaceful? Oh, did I mention that I'm a magical girl? To keep the world's peace, I was born. But today, it's quiet today.
This is part of an audio recording obtained during the rampage of the date of Redacted. The abnormality used a radio installed in the facility to call the emergency planning team. There is continuous sobbing.
This is the emergency planning team. Please identify yourself.
I think I did this. I couldn't stop myself. It's my fault. I ruined everything. I betrayed the people who were kind to me. I don't remember why I did this.
Could you elaborate on what happened?
I don't know. They aren't moving. There's so much blood. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
The rest is omitted. The 3 bodies were found in the abnormality's containment unit. The abnormality lost all memory of the incident afterwards. So that kind of just displays what the rest was talking about. That there definitely is moments where they lose control and are very unaware of what the heck is going on. But that also kind of gives us a little bit more of a look into why something horrible has to happen for Magical Girl to be like, okay, it's okay that they weren't the one who suppressed it. That's not evil enough. That doesn't sit. That sits too much into a gray area. It's inside of the box, and it needs to be on either ends of it. Otherwise, if it's anywhere on that spectrum of good and evil, like morally, it's not good enough. It's kind of a terrifying way to think about things, but I get it. I get why now they act the way they act. I also understand now why they're such a pain to deal with sometimes. I mean, that's just an overgeneralization. They're actually not that bad now that I kind of understand it. But I do feel bad for them. If that makes sense, I do feel bad that they're like that. I kind of wish I knew a way to help them not feel like they need to have a problem to solve. But I think in general, for people's mental health, it's a lot easier if there is a problem to solve. If there is something that they're needed for. If there's no need for you, or if things come too easy, I think sometimes we kind of feel bad. Like, oh, anyone could do this. A good example of that would be like imposter syndrome in anything that you do. So if you feel like, oh, like I'm not special, like anybody could be doing this, what I do is not good enough, or there's not enough need for me out there, there's not enough evil in the world in their case. So that kind of definitely plays into a huge section of like the bad portion of the psyche. And I say bad, I don't mean to put like that kind of a label on it, because it's not necessarily the bad part, but normally that's like a negative feeling. So that's why I call it the bad part. The next one I want to talk about is Der Freischütz. Der Freischütz is probably one of my favorite designs, just in general. Look at that face. This is going to be awesome. The devil ultimately wished for despair weighs down the mind and drains one's will to go forward. When one feels there's nothing left to go for, their soul falls down to hell, the devil's domain. This is why the devil finds it more entertaining to watch people fall to despair, rather than to simply kill them. We describe it as selling one's soul to the devil. When a marksman receives a gun from the devil proposes a childish contract. The last bullet would puncture the head of his beloved. The moment he heard that, he sought and shot all the people he loved. Then he told the devil, "This magical bullet can truly hit anyone, just like you say." With the last bullet gone for good, the hunter traveled to numerous worlds. Sometimes he helped those in need or fought evil, but it was all done on impulse, not a gesture of goodwill or ideals. In one world, he was called a righteous hunter, while in another, he was a blood-stained gunman. One day, the marksman realized the devil was no longer following him. He pondered why, then realized that his soul had already fallen to hell from the beginning. The contract had already been fulfilled, so the devil had left. The marksman, now a devil himself, continues to pull the trigger to gather the souls of others. Just as the devil said, the bullet will puncture anything you please, forever. So, I'm not exactly sure what it means by the last bullet. The last bullet would puncture the head of his beloved. I'm not sure what that exactly means, unless it sort of means that the day you decide that this is your last shot, that last shot will go astray and will hit someone that you love. So it seems like to counteract that, they decided to just go on a killing spree. They murderized everyone they ever loved or cared about. That way, that would never happen. I hate to be that person, though, but if you lose every single person that you've ever loved, and you still have the will to go on living, that paints a giant target on yourself. Because at that point, you're the only one you ever cared about. Now, you might not be like somebody that you love, but you care enough to continue on going with whatever this is. That's a lot. So, in the end of the day, this shows that, they made all of these sacrifices and got rid of all of the people who mattered to them in order to reach a goal. And at the end of the day, all that did was point the bullet back at them. So even though they stand alone and they seem truly neutral, they really don't care what happens to anyone else. It's like a double-edged sword here. They gained strength. So now if we work at our theory with that, this is kind of what A was doing. A was trying to push everyone away, try to not get attached to people because this line of work is dangerous. And, I mean, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. They ended up getting got in horrible ways. And because of that, the only one left for A to care about is themselves or the work or whatever it was. So, which the work kind of defined them, who they were. So if they lost the work, they lost themselves anyway. No matter what, the bullet was pointed back at them. So that's kind of cool. This kind of does give a little bit of insight into what they were thinking and why they made all of the horrible decisions that they decided to make. Because they were doing that in order to, like, free themselves of the guilt of having to, you know, deal with others or care about others. That's a sad life, though. That's a lonely life. And I think they eventually realized that, which is unfortunate for them that it took them that long to realize that. But that happens. You know, sometimes people get so carried away with their careers that they lose track of the people around them, the people who they love. So, you know, this isn't necessarily outside of the realm of possibility. The day's pretty easy. You can get it done before it even melts down for the 5th time. If you know exactly what you're doing and you can see everything, which I could not in the past ones. Okay, so I know we read Magical Girl. We read Der Freischütz. Let's take a look at Army. Because Army seems to be one that I'm so interested in Army. This was created... Oh! So people were telling me this was, like, proposed by a backer. Someone who, like, donated money in order for them to make this game. Which is awesome. And it's kind of neat that they include the Tumblebug? Okay. That must be where... like, they had their donations. But it's cool that they include the name and that they give them credit for this idea. This abnormality takes the form of humanoid creatures in pink equipment. Its intellectual capacity is high enough that it can verbally converse with human beings. At the very least, it seems friendly during observation and work. It has identified itself as a special force from Redacted, and uses the pronoun we when referring to itself. It has continuously shown positive intentions to help humanity. An audio recording from the first contact with the abnormality is included. The first section is omitted due to it being extremely boring. The last half is very interesting. Serena continues.
Well, I feel threatened because you're armed. That bright pink outfit's disturbing as well. It doesn't belong in a place like this.
What's your opinion on the nature of humans, Miss Serena?
I think it depends on a person's experience. Why do you ask?
It is a highly debatable topic, but this is what we think we should do. If a person is good from the start, we protect their good heart. If a person is bad from the start, we will make a good heart out of them and protect that heart.
How are you going to do that?
We can see the color of humanity's hearts. The color of the human heart is pink, and by wearing the same color, we can blend in with the people's minds. We will gladly get dirty for the sake of the good-hearted.
Wait, you'll get dirty instead of the people? Is that actually a thing that's possible?
Indeed it is.
Oh, well, I'm sorry, but I just can't trust you, or what you say. It's rather suspicious that you can just see the color of someone's heart.
If anything happens, just call us, ma'am. End of recording. That's kind of cool. Now, I'm not sure exactly where that fits into the puzzle piece of my theory just yet, but maybe the rest of this will kind of show it. Following what was stated in the recording, the abnormality's will to help others is solid. We have yet to grasp detailed information around this abnormality. Perhaps actually asking it for help could aid in learning more. Don't do that. Trust me, it's not worth the help. The outfit is awesome. Don't ask for the help. However, just like any other abnormality, we shouldn't blindly trust it. I plan to have a suppression team ready while I pretend to ask it for help. So, a lot's happened up to now. To summarize the whole thing, this abnormality is the best thing we've ever had here. A few months ago, I took a chance asking this abnormality for help, and ever since, I've been using it. I've gotten help from it about redacted times by now. My efficiency at work has gotten so much better, too. At this point, just looking at something pink makes me feel better. Those creatures bolster in a way even the greatest leaders can't match. This abnormality will greatly improve our employees' quality of life. An excerpt from an audio recording is included. Serena continues.
You could do it again today, right?
Yes, the human heart is pink, and we wear the same color. We will drive away bad thoughts.
You hear that? Yes, it's still in the best condition. We can put this abnormality to good use again in our next suppression. They're so much better than human soldiers. Perhaps we should positively consider putting them as our special suppression team. On a side note, they seem to have gotten a bit darker in color, but I don't think it's anything to lose sleep over.
Uh-oh.
The human heart. We must clean. Even the smallest speck of evil must be clean.
It seems a bit less energetic than usual, though it'll be fine, I think.
End of recording. An urgent report of the incident related to Army in Pink. We filed this urgent report due to the drastic change in Army in Pink. We're still trying to grasp exactly what happened. A total of redacted employees have passed away. The following audio is a recording of the assumed first casualty employee, Serena. Serena continues.
An abnormality has broken out again in the redacted section. I'd like to ask if you could help us out again.
Yes, we, the Army in Black, blend into the human heart
and drive away good thoughts.
Hold on. What? That's not your line.
The human heart is black. We must regularly clean.
What are you talking about? You're creeping me out, man.
We'll protect you with our black love.
Stop! I'll call the suppression team. If you move even an inch, I swear!
We salute you, ma'am.
The recording abruptly ends after the sound of a huge explosion and a shrill scream. Wow, okay, so I think where this one sort of kind of fits in is that this is the I want to help others in order to feel better kind of stage. They wanted to help others, but in doing so, by making other people happy, they were absorbing all of those feelings, those negative feelings. And eventually, even the happiest, strongest person succumbs to that kind of stress. Because a single person has enough stress to deal with in their own life. If you take on other people's stress, especially a large number of people's stress, and try to help them deal with it themselves, that leads to this situation where you succumb to that. You succumb to those bad feelings. So I think that's sort of kind of what this is supposed to represent. Now, I also realize that this is like a fan made or like a backer made abnormality, but it doesn't feel like it's shoehorned in like, oh, okay, that's a wonderful idea. Now let's see how we can sort of kind of make this make sense. It seems like there was a lot of thought into this and how it kind of fits into this theme of every single one of these is like a compartmentalized version of the person or like part of their emotion. So that's pretty cool. That's really neat. I was wondering how they were going to manage to do that because all of these other ones feel like they were super thought out. They kind of sort of had an idea on like where they wanted to go with it, and then they kind of made something that matched it. So, yeah, that's super awesome. Now, let's see. Is there any other abnormalities I want to read right this second? No, I don't think I want to read any other ones right now, but that's not to say I'm done just yet. And the reason I don't want to read any of the other ones right this second is there was a question posed in the comments about why I think we are the manager. And from everything that we've learned up until this point, I kind of want to discuss that in a little bit more length. So now that we know a little bit about some of the abnormalities, we know about Bloodbath, we know about maybe roughly half of them right now. Now I kind of have a bigger picture of this. I see how the other Sephirah or Sephirat are treating us. And, you know, someone, they asked, in the, I wish I had the comment right here so I could just read it, but the gist of that comment is, why do I think we are the manager? Why are we given the most important role with the most important, you know, branch of the Lobotomy Corporation? And I think the answer to that is that we always were. We weren't suddenly hired the day the game started. We always were. And that's why we can rewind time and go back to certain days. And why we can go back to day one and certain things are permanent. It's similar to like what happened with the Sephirah, with the Sephirat, in that they get, how do they put it? Restored? Something like that. They get reset. They get smashed, stuffed back into another box and turned loose again. And part of them remembers. Part of them forgets. Tifereth is a good example of this. I was trying to think of a good example. Tifereth is perfect. Tifereth remembers what happened to them. They remembered getting smashed. Not only is that very traumatic to try to deal with, but that shows you that there is a certain permanence with them. So, my theory is kind of sort of evolving a little bit. Now we have a branch here. So the first is, this is a compartmentalization of what happened. And like all of our psyche is divided up into these different departments, or these different compartments. And that's why you have the different teams which do different jobs within each of the compartments. And that kind of makes sense because as you progress in like your behavioral therapy or, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy, if you're going to be more specific, you learn a little bit about how each of your departments are going to work, how each of the compartmentalizations work together, and you kind of adapt. They change. Your idea of what each of your emotions and feelings are changes. Just like a person can change in life. Going through like some sort of, you know, behavioral therapy to cope with a grave loss, like what was outlined in Bloodbath, that would constantly be changing. You'd be constantly rewriting like what you believe the world to be like. So I totally could see this being a massive metaphor for that. On the other hand, let's assume that this is more physical. This is more literal. If that's the case, I think we're a robot. I think we're just like everyone else. We are a representation of A, who A is. And maybe the only person here, and that's what Angela was trying to say. When Angela said, Angela is the only person who can be considered a human. Now, that either means Angela is like the therapist helping you or, counseling you through this, or to get back to the more physical, the more literal sense of it, Angela is the actual person running the experiment, and you, even us, are a robot. And we can be reset whenever Angela figures that we're off track on the experiment. The experiment has gone awry, reset it. And that's why it starts day one. That's why all of the Sephiroth already have feelings about us, even though they don't know us. That's why they can relate to us. Because my whole idea of, maybe we're A, and we're coping with all of this, that very well could be, but this might be an AI version of A, coping with all of this over and over again. It's just a continual loop of horrible things. Now, to what end someone would have devised a cruel experiment like this? I don't know. I don't know why they would have done that. Why Angela would have decided that this is what they needed to do. Or possibly Carmen decided what they needed to do. My guess is maybe this is like, if we're going to go with that route, maybe it's A that kind of made this, and everyone is basically a machine, and Carmen is the closest thing to human or Angela is closest thing to being human because they were a representative of Carmen and the bad thing that happened to them. And this is A's attempt at figuring out if they're running like a simulation with physical beings and physical AI, which are inside of these like robots. They're figuring out what would have happened. That way they can kind of see, if I had done something differently, could I have changed this? Or does it always lead down the same path? So this is like a simulation, a physical simulation that A is running constantly. And that we are actually a representation of A. That we're not A exactly, but we're what A would have been if this exact situation played out. So that could be what's going on too. So there's my two theories now, and that's why I think we're the manager. We're either the manager because we're the one coping with this, and it only makes sense that we would be the one in control then, or we are part of the simulation itself. We're just a cog in the machine, and we were assigned this role to represent who the manager would have been, to represent A, or whoever was in charge of this mess. Because this is a mess. Regardless of which it is, it's a mess. Either way, though, I think that was a pretty successful day, and I think we have two decent running theories. The best thing about having theories, especially about something as complicated as this, is that when you finally get a couple theories that you can smack together and like challenge each other, you get more information. The best thing you can do in like certain situations that seem very confusing is to like come up with a couple hypotheses and test them both at the same time, or all of them at the same time. Because with that, you learn a lot more. You learn which one feels about right. And then as you collect more data, you can actually have like definitive objective data saying, oh no, this one seems more correct than the other one. But in the beginning, it's like a gut feeling. So I think that's one of the best ways to look at this. Because otherwise, if I'm working on a singular theory, I get tunnel vision. And I think a lot of people would get tunnel vision then. They're like, oh, all of the information must equal what I'm thinking. Otherwise, the information just doesn't exist. I don't need that. So they throw it away. This way, I can look at all of it. Because now I can, basically piece it out. Okay, this one goes to this theory, this one goes to that theory. And in the end, it's probably a little bit of both. Or none of those. And I'll eventually figure it out as it tells me. It might get to the point where it just hits me over the head with, this is what's going on, dummy. And I'm like, oh, nothing I even thought, but hey, that's cool too. I like that even, if it sort of misleads you, as long as it does it in a good way. It doesn't just straight up lie to you. And in the next one, we're going to be tackling another suppression. So get ready for that, and remember to take care. And goodbye!